Hi, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Daniel Medina. I'm here to welcome you to our Wednesday webinar. For you, those of you who don't know, I've been with Investors Advantage since 2006. Company's been around since 1979, founded by John Grace. We're going to start by walking through our website. For those of you who have not been there, webinars in the top right-hand corner. We record all of our webinars and post them here. And we also post John's interviews on our interviews page. Please make sure you check these out. Some of these have 40 or I think one's got 150,000 views now. We are also live streaming live on Facebook, so please make sure you invite your friends and family and spread the word on what we're doing. We like doing it and hope you're enjoying it. We're part of a group called Elite Financial Network that manages about $800 million. And we're one of 2 advisors in our area that we know that pays for independent research. So make sure you ask who you're talking with, where they get their research, because we bet they're not paying for it. And I'm going to introduce Mr. John Grace now. Come on.
Thanks so much, Daniel. And yeah, Daniel, 14 years. I remember as though it was yesterday. And it's been a good way to work together. You know, when you're playing doubles in tennis, for example, someone needs to be at the net, somebody needs to be in the back court, and then you switch places. So for me, it's you know, it's a good combination to have someone at the net with the math, because you know, math is a 4-letter word we need to use more often and embrace, frankly, particularly here in the U.S. of A. And of course, the words have to kind of make sense for people to go, oh, I get it. And frankly, the industry, in my opinion, we use a lot of jargon and it just makes it more confusing. And the truth is, it's not that darn confusing, but it does require a little of attention. And on that note, I will say, be wary of complacency, because it's one of those ways that people get completely comfortable and they never see the bus that's coming down the street because we're too busy looking at our phones. So that's not a good practice to maintain. And unfortunately, most of us have made that a very good habit of ours, where we're not paying attention. And so now we get hit by the bus. And if we're lucky, we get to get the license plate after it has passed us, flattened us, right? But you didn't see it, you couldn't name it, you couldn't time it until it was upside your head. So speaking of buses, let's look at what we think is something that we should be paying attention to. Because back in December, we suggested that there could be a recession. And in fact, we put the odds at about 20% on national TV. We raised those odds to 80%, and then we raised the odds again to 100%. Now, it's not that we could see the future any better, and we can't see the future at all, to be honest with you. No one can. But sometimes there are signs that give you a sense of what is around the corner. And I mean, let's suppose you had this intuition that there was going to be a 6.7 earthquake next week. If you're prepared for it, you'll probably be able to tell the story. If you're not prepared for it, you might be in the news as opposed to on the news. We want you to be able to tell your own story and to look at what might be happening so that you are better prepared for what we think of as the good, the bad, and the unforeseen. To my way of thinking, it's not about the prediction, it's all about the preparation. And unfortunately, most of us are not as well prepared as we need to be. So the things that we will cover, you have identified here. Right now, we want to look at, is it possible that there could be a depression on deck, you know, waiting to rear its ugly head? Now, let me give you the other side of that, because if we study the first depression, we can see that on a per capita basis, this is very good news, more Americans became millionaires than any other time in history. So that's not bad news for those who managed to accomplish that. I imagine they were better prepared for the rest of us who were hoping that our values would come back, and maybe they did or not during our lifetime. So we're watching for these clouds on the horizon. We're going to share some of them with you, because we do think that there is a possibility that we could see a severe downturn. As I said before, this COVID-19 is a disaster of epic proportions. And we are hard pressed to see all the places where it's showing up and it's doing great damage. But this thing is not going away. So just to kind of bring us up to date, we're hearing every day about the market hitting new highs and doing really, really well. And it has since March 23rd. But you know what's funny? If you look at the market every day, it's hard to see the trends. What I find fascinating is from January 1 through today, the Dow is still in negative territory. It's almost unconscionable. About nearly 4.7%, despite a gain of over a 1% return just in one day today. And the points, they're over 373 points up to the upside, but still the index is in negative territory. The S&P is in modest to positive territory, 3% for the year. Again, another very good day. And then notice the disconnect with the NASDAQ. We've got one slightly positive, the S&P, one slightly negative, that would be the Dow, and the NASDAQ, the darling of the stock market these days, as of today, up 22.5%. So that means $1 in January was worth $1.22.5 as of today, August 5th. Not a bad run, but we'll talk more about that too. Okay, so just when you thought it was safe to get back to life and to have things the way they used to be, man, who ever imagined that you would be in a situation where you were totally out of control? You couldn't go to work. You couldn't leave the house. You were told what to wear. You were told not to wear. It's been a it's just been a crazy time. And we're not done yet. So the World Health Organization, I just came across this yesterday, doing a little work for preparation for you. And thanks so much for joining us. This is the Director, General Tedros, forgive me, sir, Adhanom Ghebreyesus. What he said was, there is no silver bullet at the moment, and there might never be, against the novel coronavirus. He just said this on Saturday, over the weekend. And despite a number of vaccines now in phase 3 clinical trials, there is no magic cure for this virus at this time. So, you know, when I see people they're doing backflips about how good it's going to be, I always have to pause and go, do we need to keep these rose-colored glasses tied to our heads? Are we drinking the Kool-Aid? Because if all you're seeing are, you know, happy days are here again, you're probably not prepared for some surprises. And let's just look at it this way. It's not positive, it's not negative. A rose has thorns. Roses are beautiful. Thorns do hurt if you stick your finger with one. But it's the combination of the hurt and the beauty that comprise a rose. I think that's a lot like life. But if we can figure out how to play the game, maybe to our advantage, it might not hurt so bad, or maybe it's a little bit more like judo. You know, as kids, we took judo classes. We had our kids take judo classes. And what's the first thing you learn to do? Not how to throw the other guy, how to fall. How to fall so you can get up, to get back in the game, so that you could get up because it didn't hurt so bad. And that didn't mean getting up tomorrow. That meant getting up 30 seconds after you fell. So that's the first thing to learn, and I think that makes all the sense in the world. So here's one of the things that concerns us. And I think this chart makes it really clear. It's looking at the number of bankruptcies. You haven't heard about this in the news, but you're not going to miss this, okay? The number of bankruptcies are higher in the last 3 months than they were for all of the Great Depression. So that's happened very quickly. And the fallout and the understanding of it has not been forthcoming yet. And when we keep seeing these markets hit new highs, we're not looking at the evidence of how many stores are just shutting their doors forever. In fact, I found 2 different sources. One said it was 33,000. The other said, no, it's 100,000 of US businesses, mostly small businesses, that are shuttered forever. Who does that impact? And it's like a ripple, because it doesn't just impact the people in the equation, it affects all the people, many of the people around the ones on the front line. By the way, let me just say this real quick, as far as front line. We're now doing financial plans for anyone who works on the front line anywhere in the country. Daniel and I will take up to 90 minutes. We'll help people who work at the front line. It's your definition, right? Certainly the healthcare professionals and the people who work in law enforcement and the ones who are in the fire department, even teachers, and in many cases retail people. They're on the front lines. And this COVID thing is affecting the minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses the harshest. So what we're saying is, what we're asking is, what can we do to be supportive of these people who are trying to do everything they can to keep us safe, putting their lives in peril every single day. I don't know how I would be able to do that, but I'm so thankful they're willing to do that. And they really have good heart about it. So the best thing we can do, normally, from what we can understand, the charge for doing a plan, when financial planners bother to do them, and many don't, they just put the money somewhere, it's about $1,500 as, I'm sorry, $2,000 as the cost for doing the plan. For frontline workers, we will spend up to 90 minutes with individuals or couples, doesn't matter, as I say, around the country to help them put a financial plan together so that they can see that there's some support for them to get to the other side. Maybe they can weather the storm, knowing they have the equivalent of today's income set aside behind door number one, so they can make work optional on their time frame, and then recognize that now we need to keep this same level of income happening for the next 20, 30 years. But let's see the goal. If you live to be 100, how much money are you going to need to retire at 70 or 65 and live to 100? If something happens to the breadwinner, what does the survivor need to see that financially, I might miss you, but I'm not going to miss your money because the money has been duplicated. And then if there are children in the equation, what are your goals? They're all financial, but we're gonna put a target on it so you can see it, and you might see how you might hit it. What are your goals for the kids? Is it 1 year of Harvard? Is it 4 years at Cal State Northridge? Whatever it is for each kid, we'll make that a financial arrangement so that you can see this is what I need to contribute. This is the return I need to get, so I can check both of those over time. And if I hit both of those, by the time I need the money, I know that I have exactly the money that I need to educate the kids. And while everybody else is crying because they're so delighted the kids graduated, you'll be crying for that too, as you are crying because nobody owes anybody any money when people are leaving school only $80,000, $100,000, which is just hard to imagine. So getting back to our bankruptcies here, found a great source, a gentleman by the name of David Hunter. He's only been in the business on the market side, stocks primarily, for the last 47 years. And he gave a global economy, he asserted as far as the global economy is concerned, that we're in the midst of a massive bust consisting of two distinct phases. Phase two of the bust, which Hunter is forecasting to take place in late 2020 or early 2021. Now, the folks who say, here's what we think is going to happen, and here's when we think it's going to happen, they're really trying to take on a big task in my mind. We don't try to talk about when we think it might happen because no one can really put their finger on that pulse. I don't believe at all. So I don't care if it's late 2020, early 21. If that's true, it gives you some time. But more importantly, don't be complacent and wait for I got plenty of time. No, suppose it's tomorrow, and what are you doing to keep your money from being crushed by a severe decline? So he thinks that what we see in the forecast will be steeper and deeper than the first phase as far as we're recovering, and then whoops, bear with me. And despite in the ongoing, I'm sorry, first phase. So in the second quarter, the challenge is the transfer payments and the personal income. We'll get to that, but the transfer payments is a way where a lot of people, thanks to the government, have been receiving checks that either make a significant contribution or actually provide a higher income for a short period of time than they had as if they were working. Now, that's not sustainable for the government. It's certainly not sustainable for the person, but it certainly gives you, at least a temporary relief from the standpoint of having cash, which means you can continue to spend. But of course, at any time, the supply can stop. And what we're seeing is what he's calling the Washington spending machine, boosted transfer of payments at a $2.4 trillion annual rate, or nearly 4 times what we saw at the end of the second quarter, which is about $680 billion that came in from the government. So that's, as I say, not the best news, and it's certainly not sustainable. So, but again, look for the bankruptcies. Listen for that kind of noise. Those are real severe clouds on the horizon. Those clouds worry us just as much as COVID-19. All right, so here's the deal on the transfer of payments. What you see here is in what some people are calling reckless overkill. We've managed, the US of A, to vaporize 6 years of economic growth during the last 3 months. So you've got the red line with that's income, and the blue line represents government income or government financing, if you will. This is far deeper and is reflected in millions of small businesses permanently destroyed, tens of millions of households wiped out financially. I mean, you're going to see situations where you're going to see more in the news. People can't make their rent. They're not making their house payments. They're behind 3-4 months on their car payments. You know, when the economy stops, it's hard to fathom how the stock market can continue just going to the moon. And at some point it stops and then it reverses itself. So we'll give you an idea of how bad we think that might get. But it's again, not sustainable. Here's one that I think really kind of gives you a real good sense visually of exactly what's going on with gross domestic product. That's all of our spending that was rising, and then you can see it just falling like a cliff. And by the way, I think this may be a precursor, and one of the things that we've been saying so that people kind of get a visual of it. Remember Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner, right? When they'd run off the flat plane and stay in the air for maybe 1 or 2 seconds, and you're just captivated by them standing in midair. And then it, poof, they're gone. And now the question becomes, how low can it go? This is how I look at our economy at this point in time. Some of the forecasters we work with are suggesting that we could see a 40% decline first, followed by another 40% decline. Yes, that's a total of an 80% downturn or an 80% loss as far as the stock market is concerned. I think that is a possibility. It has happened before. It could happen again. And sometimes what happens, in fact, if we look at the Great Depression, we can see for about a 6-month period, there was a nice gain of 50% that held, again, for 6 months. Now, that was between 1929 and 1930. So when you look at that bubble, 50% gain, you kind of go, hey, we're off to the races. Happy days are here again. Everything's fine. But it wasn't until a total of 30 months later, roughly from peak to trough, that we saw that the stock markets, only measured by the Dow, that was the only market at the time, off about 80%. Some sources say 89%. When we do the math, what that means is $1 million in 1929 in about 30 months was worth $108,000. Imagine having $1 million and 30 months later you have 108,000. And for my peers who say, well, it always comes back. Yeah, it did. In about 25 years, according to Yahoo Finance, 25 years. Let's keep in mind, thanks to the Census Bureau, we can see that the average life expectancy for most Americans was about mid-50s, 57 roughly. So you had to be an adult to have $1 million, right? And if it took 25 years for that account to get back to even, assuming you didn't spend a dime and you didn't sell any of your holdings that just crushed you 80, 89%, kind of ridiculous, right? It took 25 years to get back to even, by which time you were long dead. I mean, let's just be clear, right? So this is one of the things that motivates me to do what we're doing here right now, because I don't want to be a party to that, to say, hey, stocks for the long term, hold and hope, sit and take it. Yeah, 25 years, who cares? Yeah, it'll come back. Yeah, but you might be out of the picture by then. So the question, the way we approach it, the better question we think is not just sit and take it. How could we limit the losses so that you can see that you're still in the game without needing a Hail Mary pass? That's the work we like to do. How can we put guarantees in the situation, for example, not much different than a pension or a Social Security? That's probably pretty reasonable to rely on. So how do we put some certainty in the equation so that there's a base? And in fact, let me kind of set it up like this. Daniel and I were at a workshop of probably 100 of our peers, and the speaker asked, I thought was a magnificent question. And he left it open-ended, so I'll play along with me on this, please. He asked us 100 advisors from mostly Southern California. The question is, if you had 2 groups of clients, which one is happier? And what he was saying, it took a while for us to get his logic, but he was saying, when you have $5 million and you're taking a 4% withdrawal, that's $200,000. That's a great life lifestyle. But if that $5 million, for whatever reason, gets cut in half to $2.5 million, now to keep the same income, $200,000, the yield has to double from 4% on $5 million to get $200,000 to 8% on $2.5 million to get the same $200,000. So the people with money, they're worried about it. They're worried about all the things that could happen, the things they think about, the things that they don't think about, and it keeps them up at night. So his point was, if you had to divide your clients into two groups, you've got one group who are worried about their money, and the other one who have very strong pensions that aren't, because they know I'm getting, $10,000 a month. I can spend it all because on the 15th of the next month, here comes another $10,000. Happy days are here again. But again, don't be overly complacent, because, and we're going to talk about this later, not today, but at another one of our webinars, is the peril of pensions, because see, many of them are underfunded, and people don't see that this thing could go away. And in fact, we have one couple where dad was getting $10,000 a month pension. Out of the blue, he gets a letter saying your pension is going to be reduced to $1,500. Have a nice day. So the question becomes, how do we put more certainty in the equation as best we can? Because the bottom can fall out of just about everything. And as I say, we'll become overly complacent, then we're not ready to be able to recover, which of course is exactly what we want to do when we fall, to be able to recover, and that way to express life the way we choose to do so. So on this notion of having a personal pension or putting guarantees in the equation, we've asked Brad Sykoff, a longtime friend of mine. We've been working together for about 15 years, I believe. He started in this area, if I'm not mistaken, 15 years ago, and he's primarily been with insurance companies and primarily doing work with variable annuities. There are some that we like, there's some that we detest. Brad has always worked for the companies that we like. That's why we're still friends. And he well understands that. And what we've asked Brad to do is, we have a problem with painting the brush with the same color, right? You go to 31 flavors, you at least look and maybe taste several of the ice creams. You go back to vanilla, but you like looking at all the colors. So we like looking at all the products, and then we only want to use the ones that we think are the best suited for our clients. So Brad, bring us up to date. You've been with AIG for a while now, and you've seen, as we have seen, some annuities that work and some that don't. Highlight the characteristics of the annuities that we like. And again, we're not painting it. They're not all good. They're not all bad. They may have a purpose or not, but it all depends on what you, the investor, are worried about. And now how can we address that in a customized way so that you can worry a lot less than you would have on your own? Take it from there, please,
well,
Brad.
That's a great setup. Could everyone hear me okay? You hear me fine?
Yes.
Perfect, perfect. And Daniel, I think you're going to control the slides, possible? Perfect, great. And John, just before I get into my comments, as you mentioned, we've been working together for over 15 years, and I have to hand it to you, because you stay visible through good markets and bad. I work with hundreds of financial advisors, and oftentimes they get a little quiet during these times that are uncertain and challenging, and you stay front and center. And I think more than anything, as people navigate through retirement, which can be very challenging and concerning, you stay right there to make sure you're the guide, and you don't just take the information in and just take it at face value. You question the information, and I value our relationship and friendship and partnership, but more than anything, thanks for incorporating these types of strategies into the portfolio, because I think to be properly allocated in retirement, especially with the environment we're going through, to be properly allocated, you do need an allocation to some type of guarantees. It's a portion, and I always mention it. It's not for everyone, not for all your money, but to just have a hedge in case things go bad. And guess what? Things have gone kind of bad recently, and we're trying to get through this very tough environment the best that we can. And a lot of people are concerned. And so, as you mentioned at the very end there, if you can just reduce some of that uncertainty, increase that peace of mind, and just really focus on what's important to us, it takes having a portfolio that can navigate through all kinds of markets and uncertainty. So if you can turn to the next slide, Daniel, and then the next slide. So it's really understanding what are the challenges that we need to focus on, because there's so much information being thrown at us, but what are the most important things that we need to take into account? And I'm just going to kind of highlight a few things. This is just to keep it very educational. I'll share a little bit at the end about our specific strategies. But if you do anything, ask John and Daniel more about these types of programs, because more people are looking at ways to incorporate more guarantees into the portfolio. Also, as John mentioned, if you survey anyone that has been a public servant, a teacher, a firefighter, anyone that has a pension, otherwise known as the guaranteed paycheck for life, they typically live longer, happier lives. They don't have to worry about that next paycheck. They don't have to worry about the markets. They know they have certainty. And the real question is, are you going to outlive your money? Is your money going to outlive you? And that's what everyone's asking themselves, and that's why these types of programs have really become a focal point for a lot of people to make sure they're properly allocated and they have just a piece of this type of strategy in their portfolio. But let's go to the next slide. So longevity risk. You know, we all know that, hey, we're all feeling more vulnerable these days. We're all feeling a little bit, frustrated. Things don't get healed quicker. We're not a little further along. But at the end of the day, if you look at life expectancy, it continues to go up. And in this case, many Americans retiring in their early 60s, they should just plan on 30 years of retirement. You can't plan on 10 years and then live 30. You have to plan on 30 years. Failure is not an option here. So 50% chance, a married couple today, 65 years old, one's going to make it to 93. Flip a coin. One of you is going to make it to 93. 25% chance that one of you is going to make it to age 97. So plan on sometimes a longer time in retirement than you were working. So as we go through this presentation, think about income. How can I provide income for as long as I live? So as we go through this presentation, it's all about income and making sure it lasts as long as you live. So Daniel, next slide. Anyone go to the supermarket lately and get a quart of milk and get as frustrated as I do when I realize the prices continue to go up? Anyone stayed at a hotel recently and you realize, my God, when did hotel rates go to $300, $400, $500? Inflation is here. It's going to continue to be with us, and you got to make sure a portfolio is going up equivalent to inflation. A portfolio will make up for an increase in cost of living. It's just a part of our world. We've always experienced it. We get frustrated year in and year out as prices go up, but you have longevity risk. You have inflation risk. Next slide, Daniel. You have market risk. Markets go up and down. It's just been a part of, investing. Markets go up and down. And you just have to plan on dips, 5% or more. A dip is 5% or more. And going back to 1900, it's happened 400 times. It does happen. How about 10% correction? Bear markets have happened 32 times, or on average, once every about 4 years. So bear markets are going to be a part of investing. You just have to incorporate it, embrace it. Volatility happens. But next slide, please. But it's all about income. And when you think about how you're going to spend your money in retirement, this is a Department of Labor study that says that when you first retire, you typically spend more early. And maybe as you get older, a lot of people call it the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. And as we live throughout retirement, oftentimes we spend more early. We first retire, we have all this extra time, we want to travel, we want to do things, you know, before the knees go out, the hips go out, we're spending money. But how do Social Security and pensions work? Well, the longer you wait, the older you get, the bigger the check, right? So if you think about when I first retire, the longer I wait, if I defer Social Security from 62 to age 70, I'm going to get a guaranteed 8% increase for every year I defer. But what ends up happening? 60 to 70% of people claim Social Security at their first possible chance. Maybe because they didn't save enough, maybe because of health issues, but at the end of the day, bird in hand, I don't know how long I'm going to live, so I'm going to take my income as soon as I possibly can. Now, based on life expectancy, the break even, whether you took it at 62 or 65 or age 70, you get to the same exact place based on life expectancy. But people take Social Security early for one main reason. I don't know how long I'm going to live. There's uncertainty there. I might as well take it at my first possible chance. Next slide, Daniel. So let's just talk about how we invest. So we know this retirement thing is this looming time that we have all these plans and we're going to do all these things. Next slide, please. The question is, how are we going to invest? And this is where John and Daniel really come in. They build this beautiful portfolio, making sure you're diversified and you're covering all the different buckets. But a lot of times people don't fully understand the trade-offs with those different investments. Now, I come from the guaranteed income side, otherwise known as an annuity. And look up the definition according to Webster. What is an annuity? It's a guaranteed check for life. And when you think about all the boxes that it checks, tax deferral. Now, if it's an IRA, you're already getting tax deferral. You're probably not buying the annuity because you're looking for tax deferral. You're looking for, you're buying an annuity for the features that it offers. Growth potential. How about protection or insurance? Professional money management. Beneficiary protection. You know, what if something happens to me? What if I die too soon? Who gets the money? Well, your beneficiaries will get the remainder. Flexible income options. Predictable income stream. A lot of people, as John mentioned, pensions, they look at annuities as a personal pension. It offers predictable income, guaranteed lifetime income, and that's really the biggie. As we survey people, we realize that a lot of people are concerned about running out of money. So if those attributes of an investment are something that is suitable for you, I would take a look at variable annuities. A lot of times annuities are misunderstood because they confuse annuitization, fixed annuities, variable annuities, you name it. There's a whole plethora of different annuities. Variable annuities right now have been a driving force in our business because it's really the only place you can have your cake and eat it too. You can have the growth potential with downside protection. Wait, I get all the up and none of the down? Right. And once again, remember the main point. What are we thinking about? Income. Annuities are there for income. That's the objective. We're going to turn this into income, and I want certainty. I want it guaranteed for the rest of my life, my spouse's life. I want my beneficiaries to be able to receive whatever we don't take. So we're going to highlight in a little bit variable annuities, but we also have fixed annuities. There's mutual funds out there. There's stocks. There's bonds. Just understanding the trade-offs with all the different investments. Next slide, Daniel. Next slide. So as we survey retirees, 61% of those surveyed indicated that their greatest concern when it comes to transitioning from the accumulation phase to the distribution phase of their life is outliving their retirement savings. And so what ends up happening is they tend to hold back. And what we also see is they tend to have this bucket of money, they don't spend, and then as they get older, they regret not doing the things that they could have done earlier. They didn't travel as much. They didn't do as much because they didn't know how long it had to last. So if you had a way to guarantee this income that you couldn't possibly outlive, maybe that will add that degree of predictability in the portfolio. 89% of those surveyed think that today's retirees may need to be more careful about their spending there's a huge debate about what's a reliable withdrawal rate. What's the goal? The golden rule has always been 4%, but with low interest rates, with the current environment, that's in question today. It's more like 3%. And how many people who have done everything they were supposed to do, they put all this money away, can live on just 3% of their portfolio? It becomes challenging. The next slide, Daniel. So we always have to look at the pillars. What do we rely on to generate that income? So I just sold my company. I just took my retirement package. And now I'm going to take this income to support my lifestyle. The paycheck stopped from my company. Where are the paychecks coming from? Well, we're going to get Social Security, and we're going to claim that when we believe it's right for us. But then all those other sources, savings, 401k, pension, rental income, post-retirement, maybe it's a consulting job. Will all that income cover your expenses? Will it cover your fixed expenses? Will it cover your fun expenses, the lifestyle expenses? That's the question. So a lot of the calculations that are run are, what do you need minus what are you going to get, and do you have a gap? And how much of that gap do you want insured? How much of it do you want protected? And that's where those retirees tend to allocate a portion into products that have guarantees, products that do have lifetime income. Daniel, next slide. So let's just take a look at a couple of the different strategies that either AIG, this was specific to ours, but there's a whole plethora of products out there. We happen to offer one of the top selling products out there. Next slide, Daniel. So ours at AIG is known as Polaris Variable Annuities. These are long-term investments designed to help you build assets and secure your income for retirement. They can provide guaranteed income through various options and benefits. And one in particular is our Income Plus Daily Flex, and then Polaris Income Plus Flex. So Daniel, next slide. So let's take a look a little deeper. Next slide. There you go. So I mentioned a safe withdrawal rate typically is about 3%. Some even go as high as 4%. That's adjusted for inflation. You know, gives you a high likelihood of not running out of money. But once again, there is a degree of risk that I may outlive my savings. What you'll notice here is if you're 65 years old, at AIG, single life, option 1, MAWA stands for maximum annual withdrawal amount. We're going to give you a 6% distribution rate on the value of your account. And then if that account value were ever to go to zero because of markets and volatility and the distributions you take out, if that ever goes to zero, the protected income payment is 4% guaranteed for life, no matter what, from that point forward. And I'll show you in a slide or two what that's based off of. Option 2 is a 7% distribution rate. And once again, if the account were ever to go to zero, just fully depleted, then it's 3% for life. Or it's a 4.75 guaranteed for life, never to go down from that point forward. At 72, you get a little bit higher rates. We also have joint life options, where on option 1, 5.5%, the same 4 if it were to go to zero, 6.5 and 3, or 4.25% for life. This is good if you're opening up an IRA, you have an IRA rollover, and you want to make sure that those distributions from your individual IRA are going to cover both your lives. Both husband and wife had guaranteed checks for life based on these rates and based on these options. And by the way, if you did want to change that option down the road, the Flex stands for the ability to change income options. So you do have to choose your option up front, but you can change it down the road if your life happens to go through challenging times. So next slide. So what is that income based off of? The income is based off of what you put in, or at least a 5% guaranteed growth rate every year for 15 years while you're deferring income, or your highest day, and that's really key. We had retirees send over rollovers to AIG in March of this year when things were just so uncertain, when the markets were going down, and they said, hey, if this is guaranteed, I could be a little bit more growth-oriented in my portfolio. If you're covering this, you have the guarantees. And what have happened to those accounts? They're up 45 to 50% just in the last few months. And by the way, because it's daily lock-ins, AIG looks at that account every single day. If that account continues to go up every day, you might have a new high watermark. That becomes your new baseline for those withdrawal rates. We will guarantee your income based on the high watermark it ever reaches, even if it's these intra-year market highs. That's what distinguishes us. Next slide. Even while you're taking income, we still look at your highest day. And if your account value were to exceed that high watermark, we're going to reset it, and now your income is now based on that new high watermark. Next slide. The investments are from some of the best managers, next slide, in the business. So these are some of the names that you know, some that you don't know, and the beauty is every fund company might have a specialty. They might have a track record in a certain area, and we hire and fire the best managers to create a perfect portfolio. Next slide, please. The other option is Income Plus. Next slide. Once again, very similar withdrawal rates that you have with Income Plus Daily, but what's different about this, next slide, is the growth rate. So the growth rate on this one is 5.25% for 12 years, but we look at that annually versus daily. So we give you a little bit more worst case protection, but it's annual step-ups. Next slide. But what people like about this, next slide please, is the ability to double, worst case double. You know what, I have no faith in the market. I'm 55 years old, I'm going to retire at age 67. That means your $100,000 will increase to $200,000 net of all fees for income purposes. I just want to set the best floor I possibly can, and a 12-year double is very hard to find in this business, and if income is the only objective, the only outcome, worst case double, once again, very hard to find in this business of historically low interest rates. These products have given people that peace of mind that they just couldn't find in other investments. Next slide, please. So once again, if you're with Income Plus, if you're taking any withdrawal less than that 5.25%, we're still going to credit you the difference. If you happen to take a withdrawal of 3% or 4%, we're going to at least guarantee that minimum 5.25% growth rate minus the withdrawal that you take out. Very unique in the industry to continue to get that growth rate even while you're taking income. Next slide, Daniel. And then the way you invest, you have, once again, great money managers, great investment options, growth with guarantees. That's really the focus here with these types of products. Next slide. So what the typical annuity, what do you get? What are the attributes? You get tax deferral. Once again, a lot of the business that we receive is already tax deferred. So they're not buying these products for tax deferral, they're buying it for those other benefits that we just discussed, if that's something that would add a degree of predictability in your portfolio. Beneficiary protection. You know, a lot of times the question is, I heard these annuities, if I open this up and a week later I get hit by a bus, what happens to my money? Well, the beauty is whatever amount you put in minus what you took out will go to your beneficiaries. Now, if that account value happens to be greater than that, they're going to get the greater of the two. So tax deferral, beneficiary protection, spousal protection, these are all things that as you start to educate yourself on these types of programs, which I know John has done for many, many years, there's good ones, there's bad ones, not for everyone, it's not for all your money, but in times like this, if it can create any amount of peace of mind, if it will allow any amount of predictability in your portfolio, then you have to ask about it. You have to educate yourself. And I'm going to leave it there because that's a lot of information. I just wanted to share some thoughts as in terms of what retirees, what questions you should be asking, what should I be concerned about. A lot of the stuff that we talk about are completely out of our control. So what I love about the way John helps his clients, you really focus on what can we control, right? What can we control? And if this is something that you can incorporate to help you gain control of amidst all these things that we can't, then the timing couldn't be any better. So John, I'm going to hand it back to you. Hopefully that just sheds a little light on some of the things people are talking about there, and appreciate the time today. Thank you.
Well, you did a great job, and let's open up for Q&A, and glad you're here because we'll make sure that you get the right questions that I won't try and answer.
That's perfect.
Daniel, what
Thank
do
you.
you have?
We have some questions already coming in. For those of you who don't know, there's a Q&A button on your menu bar. You can also send questions by chat to me. First question for you, Brad. Why do some money managers say that they hate annuities?
Well, hate is a strong word, and sometimes they make a blanket statement. Annuities, as I mentioned at the beginning, they're there for income. By definition, annuities are for income, and a lot of times, I wouldn't say money managers, I would say maybe someone who's got, you know, who's just talking about accumulation. Maybe there's someone who is 30 years old, they're just putting $50 a month into an IRA every month, and it's not appropriate. And I think when you determine when this is appropriate, I've been doing this for a long time. I've always been on the annuity side, and typically what happens is I walk into a room, the question is, why do people hate annuities? And after I go through my presentation, I talk about where it fits. Usually the response is, oh, I understand. It's not for everyone. And if you do see or hear that someone puts all your money into an annuity, it's not appropriate.
Let me
but
take
a lot of times, yeah, please.
Yeah,
And John, did you want to?
Two things. One, Daniel, I see quite a bit. We are very blessed from the standpoint that we work with people where they have a $20 million net worth, and we work with people where they make $30,000, $40,000 a year. So the reason I say it's blessed is because we don't become myopic, right? We get to see the whole picture. And everybody's worried about the same thing. Am I going to run out of money before I, run out of time? And the amount of the money, they all wish they had more, every single one of them. And none of them think they're rich, sorry. So, but what we see particularly with minorities is the only access many minorities have to someone who might help them put some money away happens to be with we would call bad annuity or insurance products. And in many cases, people don't need what it is they're being sold. So that's why we have to be alert and astute and look at other alternatives, okay? And as Brad put, I think very well, there is no one size fits all. Everybody shouldn't have 100% of anything, including an annuity. The second piece of my answer would be, I suspect the guy who advertises the most, who makes that claim, probably finds annuities to be low-hanging fruit. Annuities do tend to be more expensive. And maybe they should be. They tend to do more. I mean, we have one couple where they put in $50,000. It grew to 100. Then they needed 50 back, and then the husband died. But because of the death benefit, the wife received, Daniel, I believe it was over 80. I believe it was $83,000 if my memory is correct. All I'm trying to say is nothing other than a quality variable annuity, in my opinion, well, in reality, would have produced those kinds of results. You know, if the money went in the bank, you're going to get what's left. Any other, in a mutual fund, you're going to get what's left. There's nothing that provides any kind of a bonus, and it just so happens that the death benefit had kicked in on top of the market value. So this widow received more money than she would have in any other situation. So again, we like annuities for maybe 20, 30, 40% of a client's portfolio, never 100%. But at the end of the day, this is important. We're doing everything we can to customize the solution that works for you so that you can see the market's off, whatever it's off, but you're not, or your account isn't disturbed as viciously as the average person's account. That's what we're after. Like I said, if you get to 2.6, there's a level that you want to keep that. Certainly higher is better, but lower is more important. Let's figure out what that level is and how you can see sustainable income. And that way you don't have to pull your hair out or go crazy or pray for a Hail Mary pass just to get back into living the way you were living.
Thank you. Next question for you, John. If there's a crash this year, could it be a good time to make real money?
Well, the correct answer is yes. And let's again understand who we're talking to. Who is our audience here? Daniel and I were having a beautiful appointment with grandparents and the granddaughter. And at one point we said, okay, your grandparents, they came in from Hemet, and we said, look, you're Temecula, Hemet, I think, Lancaster, there we go. So they came in for the appointment. We're in the same room at the same time. And at one point we said to the 23-year-old granddaughter, who's now working at Northrop, doing very well for herself, okay, the conversation I'm going to have with you right now, your grandparents are not in the room. So what I'm saying to you, because of your age, you want markets to decline. Think of it this way. It's like going to the beach. When's the best time to look for shells? That, of course, is when the tide is out. That's the only time to look for shells. And you collect as much as you can before the tide comes back in. So it's no different than putting, let's do the math. You're putting in $100 in the first month, you put in $100, the share price is $10 a share, so you own 10 shares. The second month, let's suppose you put in $100, but the price has moved against you 50%. Now it's $5 a share. Should you cry? Well, I don't think so. I think you hopefully are glad you just put in another $100 when the price was 50%, because why? At $5 a share and $100 invested, that's what, 20 shares? You collected more shells. And if this price ever gets north of $5, let alone back to $10, you ultimately have more money. So if you have time on your side, you don't really care so much about market declines. In fact, you might cheer. Now, grandma and granddad, that's a different story. What they have found out, because we've asked them a series of questions that, by the way, we will send you that you can answer for yourself, is what kind of loss can you accept? Notice when the market was off 37% and some of the positions you had back in 08 were off 42%, you don't want to go through that again now that you're taking withdrawals. So let's keep your number happens to be 8%. And if we're within that range, you know you can stick around. But if it's 40%, what do we need? A gain of something like 66% just to get back to even? I don't like those odds. I know you don't like those odds. And the good news is there are ways that can be very effective in limiting the losses so that, as I say, you don't have to worry about the bottom falling out because it didn't happen to you specifically, although it happened, unfortunately, for maybe too many people. It certainly happened in the overall market. So yes, that could be the very best time to make a killing or a living, however you like to term it, because prices have come down. It might be prices on businesses, it might be prices on real estate purchases, it might be prices in the stock market. When these prices come down, to the extent that you have cash, that could be a very, very good time to in fact, remember March 9th, 2009, it just so happened on that date, then President Obama said, now may be a good time to invest in the stock market. That was the low. We haven't seen that number since March 8th, March 9th, 2008, 2009. We haven't seen those numbers, okay? So it just so happened, it's been a fantastic run, but of course, again, if we had some money to move on to move into that position for stocks, particularly small caps and tech stocks, the gains would have been spectacular.
Thank you, John. Brad, can you go over the difference between the different kinds of annuities, so fixed, index, and variable?
Yeah, so variable annuities allow you to invest in all types of money management, have a diversified portfolio, there's no caps, there's no, it's unlimited upside. But variable annuities also can fluctuate in value. So if you're, once again, if your real intent is income, you have the ability to capture much higher highs, and you can harness that volatility so that that income that you're going to receive for life is off of the highest value that you possibly can achieve. Index annuities typically are an alternative to fixed annuities. but now they're benchmarking, you know, the S&P, Russell, NASDAQ. You have different indices. You're not owning those indices, but they're using those as crediting methods. So let's say you had a cap of 4% on an S&P. Well, the downside is zero. In an index annuity, just like a fixed annuity, your principal's protected. But with an index annuity, let's say the S&P did 10%. At that point, with a cap of 4, you get 4. So you could potentially get more than a straight fixed annuity. So if you go to the, you ask John and Daniel, so what are fixed annuities paying today? Well, interest rates happen to be at historic lows. You might not be getting more than 1.5–2% on a fixed annuity. So that's where people tend to gravitate to an index annuity to get potentially higher returns. Now, you're not going to get double-digit returns like you can with a variable annuity, but you can get potentially a little bit more than a fixed annuity. So on that spectrum of annuities, variable annuities, index annuities, fixed annuities, or for those that say, you know what, I just want to annuitize, all they're doing is they're converting that lump sum into guaranteed checks. You have no more access to that money. And a life-only annuity, once again, if you get hit by a bus with that life-only annuity and you get hit by a bus the next week, that money is gone. But it's going to give you the highest potential payout. There's trade-offs. And that's where John and Daniel, they, you know, obviously, they get to know their clients better than anyone. What are you comfortable with? You know, what are your needs? And that's where maybe some of those annuities, maybe it's a good fit. Maybe one's better than the other. They're all good, but it just depends on the situation and the client.
Well, and I'm not sure they're all good. Daniel, you need to chime in here. This is maybe about the 14 years ago when you started. We had a gentleman who came to us with the prospectus saying, I want to put some money in this annuity. And we could not do it. Well, first of all, unlike AIG, I guess AIG has been around for 100 years. I think it's A+ rated on the S&P and A2 on Moody's, so that's a good sign. This carrier, I think it was B+. So first and foremost, even if we wanted to offer this investment to this client, he says, you put my money in here. We couldn't do it because they're not A+. That's one of the things home office requires. But Daniel, do you remember how long was the penalty? And how much was the penalty on that particular fixed index annuity, which, as Brad has described correctly, that the sale is you get the upside, none of the downside. But you want that upside. You need that upside. And if the market's up 20 and all you get is 6, I want you to get the 20 or near there, not 6. It's not bad, but it's, you know, we want the 20. We want the gain. Do you remember what the penalty length was and the ratio of charge if you were to pull out of that annuity, Daniel?
Yeah, I believe it was 20-year surrender schedule and then maxed at 15% surrender charge.
That we would not touch under any circumstances, but they're out there. And that's why we like being your advocate as our clients, to be able to look over your shoulder and say, hey, let's find a good one for you. And that might be a little bit more than I'm going to recommend you put in a good one, but we don't think this is a good one, and here's why. That's what we like to do, to look at the lineup, if you will, and help determine which might be the best bat for you to go to bat with in the next ball game.
Okay, last question, and we'll wrap it up for the interest of time. Why is, for you, John, why is the NASDAQ, or Brad, you can chime in, why is the NASDAQ doing so much better than anything else this year?
That's a good question. I'm going to say there's a lot of speculation. I'm going to say there's a lot of optimism. I'm going to say that that's the good news, but I'm also going to say this reminds me of 2000, where we had the NASDAQ, a complete disconnect in terms of what was going on in the world, a complete disconnect with what was going on in the overall stock market. So as I say, when we see the S&P 500 barely in positive territory for the year, this is August 5th, and the Dow still in negative territory for the year, just those two makes me want to pause. And the NASDAQ is up like 22.5 for the year. What I see is there's not a lot of volume, and this is the lazy days of summer. So markets tend to be quieter, but when there's less volume, as there was in 2000, where you're looking at the top five, or the top five were taking off in January of 2000 through February, but not much of the rest of the market was participating. That's not a good sign. It's a lack of volume or a lack of breadth. That's BREADTH. We're seeing that now. So all the money's going to the tech stocks, not so much to anybody else. And as I say, we've got all these bankruptcies that are going to be hitting the pavement, not feeling very good about their prognosis. You know, Lord and Taylor have been around for what, over 100 years, and they filed. That's not a good sign.
Excellent. Thank you very much, John. Let's take a look what we got going on next week.
Good idea. What do we have going on next week? Oh, we're going to talk about reverse mortgages. Again, we like helping you see your options. We're not saying do a reverse mortgage. We're also not saying pay off your house. These are individual. And by the way, I have a problem with the person who's famous, a female, for saying my first recommendation is for everybody to pay off their house. Excuse me? It sounds arrogant to me. Maybe this person wants to pay off their house and this person doesn't. So maybe that's a personal decision as opposed to someone's mandate. So we like for you to look at the options and reverse mortgages for good reasons, and maybe recently for not so good reasons, have certainly taken it on the chin. Again, we're not saying get a reverse mortgage. We want you to understand long before you might want to look at one, how they work, what are the good news and the bad news, and maybe it's an option for you or someone you know. I mean, here's one of the things I look at. What good is it to have all this money sitting in the house that you'll never use? What good did it do? It's all in the house. Don't you want to use some of it before you get out of the house and never come back? One way or the other, I think it's kind of nice to be able to use money from time to time, as opposed to watch it locked up or watch the value decline. And now we have to do that prayer mode to hope the values come back to where you remember those values, because you just feel depressed looking at the values and they may not come back. So we'll be talking about the pluses and minuses of reverse mortgages. And then on the 19th, looks like we'll be, this is something, yeah, if you're going to live too long or die too soon, those are numbers. And financially, we want you prepared for either eventuality. So financially, it's a non-event to you. So Daniel and I will talk about how we look at life insurance when we think it is appropriate. And then more importantly, how, if it is appropriate, how do you determine how much coverage you need? And by the way, the worst question that the industry could ask, and I've only been insurance licensed since 1979, so I'm qualified to have this point of view, is what's your budget for your life insurance? Is that the question you get when you pull up with a new car with your insurance agent? What's your budget? No, that's not, they're not even asking you that. Here's your driving record, your zip code, the number of accidents you've had, the number of times you've filed. This is how much the insurance costs. That's the deal. So what we're saying is, what kind of money do you need in the event a breadwinner in your household, either one, were to predecease the other, so that the survivor, either one, it doesn't matter whether or not you're married, can know, I might miss you, but I'm not going to miss your money. I might not miss you, but I'm not going to miss your money. That's the point. We want more and more people to see, here's what it takes for me to get to 67, 70, and spend another 20 years at the same income level without working. And here's what we need to do so that, as I say, if either breadwinner were to predecease the other, right, what does the survivor need to know? I'm good financially. I'm just fine. So that's what we've got on deck for the next couple of weeks. And then, yes, if you weren't prepared for all of this uncertainty in the last 4 months, it may be a sign that you're not well prepared for the next 20 years. And if we can help you be prepared for whether it's 4 months or a future of 20 years, that's what we like to do. And as I say, once we're done, we're going to include some of the information, a little clip that's 2 minutes long that shows what happens when people saw their odds of retirement success through age 100 go from like 83 to 0, 83% odds to 0. And that's how we're helping people look at, do you want this to happen, or what can you do so that it doesn't happen to you or anything like it? We think that's a good question as opposed to just hold and hope. So in the event we could be of help to you or those frontline defenders, it would be our absolute joy to do so. And again, there's no cost or obligation for us working together, up to 90 minutes for the people working on the front line. And let me just say, folks, you know, looking at all the things going on in the world, I'm not sure if you need to wear a mask, although it may not be a bad thing. But what I do know is America, let's keep our distance because we all want to live. And we look forward to seeing you next week where we can learn a bit more and do a little bit more while we're here. Thank you. See you next week.